Jay NuFunk is a Toronto concert promoter, musician, DJ, and avid music collector. As a DJ, he shared the stage on diverse bills with an incredible list of bands and DJs. As a founding member of Toronto's NuFunk Concerts, the Make It Funky Collective, and Groovin' in the Park Festival, he has worked with some of the top DJs in the world, including DJs Mixmaster Mike, Stephen Marley, Grandmaster Flash, Scratch Bastard, Z Trip, Bonabu, DJ Shadow, DJ Newmark, DJ Qbert, Fort Knox 5, Crafty Kids, and a whole bunch of others. Jay has also performed at the Statue of Liberty in New York City and the Shub Out Festival in Kingston, Jamaica. As part of New York's No Wahala DJs crew, he and partner DJ Shabukim hosted the monthly Unwind Parties, a wildly 7-hour popular dance floor session. Unwind is a crowd-moving marathon of reggae, dub, Afrobeat, African pop, hip-hop, soul, funk, and many other genres. This is the hottest party in Brooklyn. Taking their name from a West African Igbo slang for no problem, no trouble, No Wahala DJs played at Brooklyn Bowl, Bowlery Electric, Brooklyn Bazaar, and have performed alongside UB40, Snoop Lion, Soul Live, Tortured Soul, John Brown's Body, Easy Star All Stars, Fishbone, Dub FX, and many others. Also known as a skilled guitarist, having played across Canada, an Afrobeat band, High Plains Drifter, Roots Reggae Outfits, Reggae Addiction, House of David Gang, Irie Bond, and across Northeast US in NYC's electro soul band Future Type and Woodstock, New York City's reggae group Royal Chaos. Jay, welcome to the program.
Thanks. That's a lot.
Yeah, man. That's awesome.
I've been really lucky to have worked with like a lot of great talent, but I sometimes will like show this list to like a family member, and they haven't heard of one of these.
Well, the one that pops out at me is UB40 because I'm a huge fan.
Oh
But
yeah, that was great.
yeah.
I was actually in Toronto at the Danforth Music Hall,
Okay.
and at one point there was two UB40s. The
Okay.
initial lead singer of UB40 had quit the band. He
Right.
was convinced by his own brother that they weren't treating him well. So then he left. His brother filled in for him in this existing UB40. And then I guess the main lead singer decided, you know what? I should be singing these songs. So then he recreated UB40 with two other original members. So there's
Wow.
at one point there was two UB40s traveling around the world.
Wow. Jeez. Were they singing the same tracks or?
I'm sure they were. Red, red wine.
Yeah, I was just thinking two versions of Red Red Wine. That's
Yeah.
awesome. So, um, you are a concert promoter, a musician, and a DJ. How did you get into all three? Like, can you discuss your journey?
Yeah. Well, I guess, as a kid growing up in Etobicoke, I was just really interested in guitar. And I remember driving by this pawn shop all the time and seeing this guitar in the window and always asking my mom, "Oh, can we look at this? Can we buy this?" And she had other plans. She said, "You know what? You should be playing violin. Your dad's uncle is a great violin player. We're French and Irish and Scottish.
Yeah.
Learn how to play violin." So I was given a violin at a young age, and I played in the school orchestras. I went to music camp. But in my I think I was like 15 years old. I found acoustic guitar in the attic,
Okay.
and I was just in love with the instrument. I had a little bit of like a leg up because I knew a little bit about stringed instruments,
All right.
and then I made a ton of friends at my school, and we just learned songs. And after school, we just constantly playing. And for my one of my I think it was like my 16th birthday, my parents got me an electric guitar. And soon after that, my brother ended up getting a drum kit. And every day after school, we would just rock out, you know, Black Sabbath and Pearl Jam and
Oh,
Nirvana,
awesome.
um, and Metallica. It was like a mixed bag of classic rock and like, the early grunge stuff. And, I just always pictured myself as a musician, even thinking like, beyond the basement. So I had, some bands. And not so long after that, I went to university. And, I was always talking to people about, jamming together and playing. And my first sort of year at university, I got into the radio station. So I was a campus radio DJ. And I just love like, learning about new music. And in the campus radio system, they're always making you pick new music to play. So like every week, the station's got like 100 new CDs to go through. Like, what do you want to listen to this week? And what's your genre? And, my interest, some of it was like a comedy radio show, and some of it was bring people on to play acoustic guitar and sing songs. Some of it was listening to, electronica stuff like the Chemical Brothers and DJ Shadow and down tempo stuff and dance stuff. And I know just kind of just got into all types of music through there. And that just sort of just started to just, pick my interest in doing more in music than just the performing, doing like the kind of music communication, sharing new music. And through the radio station, I ended up putting on a bunch of sort of fundraising shows to help the radio station out. So then I kind of got the bug of bringing people together. And I think the bringing people together thing was always something that was in my family. My mom is like that, and my dad are very connector people. They like love bringing family together and bringing people together for all types of parties. So I think that combined with my passion, that
Oh,
sort of set me on my path to being a promoter today. But further through university, and I went to university in Nova Scotia at St. Francis Xavier University in Antigonish. It was like a real small little town where you could do experiments. You could like, I put out my own tape
okay.
of local talent, and we were selling that. And then at one point, I made a CD. We were, selling it on campus. You could just ask if you could borrow one of the live spaces and bring people together. So it was like a real testing ground for, just creative ideas and finding other creative people to work with. And my years in, I took a business course, but I also was taking music history. And as a minor, what ended up happening is I ended up being the manager of the campus radio station. And then later I was the activities entertainment coordinator. So I would help bring the bands on campus. And that was some big shows like the Tea Party and Big Sugar. And some of them were, small shows with just local touring Nova Scotia
So
bands.
that's where the promotion came in, right? When you started
Yeah, that's
bringing
like
people.
sort of how I learned, what it takes. It takes like a bunch of different things. It takes a space, takes some talent, takes someone to communicate that this is happening, and then there's some logistics on the day of. And I just, love that process of presenting music. Like
Yeah.
just to like you design a poster and you like tell your friends, and the more excited you are when you're telling your friends, the more excited they get.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, that's quite the journey.
Kind of the start of the journey, and it's taken me all over, really all over, Europe and North America. But that was where I sort of got the bug, and I saw that those two things come together between being a DJ where you're communicating and you're communicating about music, and you're passionate about playing music with people and collaborating, and then you're passionate about bringing people together.
Yeah, so they all go into one, I guess, when it comes to that, right? And then, I mean, you run these parties now. So that's yeah, that's absolutely awesome. So on Mixcloud, it says that you are part of the No Walhalla DJs crew. What is that?
Okay, so I was so I actually was a musician for a couple of years, full-time musician in Nova Scotia, and I played in a number of bands, and then I moved back to Toronto and I started my kind of concert promoting company. But in 2011, I got married, and my wife had a position at Columbia University, so we moved in 2011 to New York City, and I for the first year sort of struggled on like what I was going to do in the music business. That was what I was passionate about.
Right.
And I ended up at this event called Giant Step. This is a kind of like a influencer neo soul meets deep house meets kind of modern music
That's
um,
cool.
party in New York, and I met this guy who was kind of in the same boat as me. He was excited about music. He DJ'd a little bit, wanted to kind of make something happen, and so we just joined forces. His wife was Nigerian, and she coined the term "no wahala," which means like no problem
Okay.
in like Nigerian native
I was
language.
gonna ask you what that meant.
Yeah,
So thanks.
so we started off by opening for like Afrobeat bands in
Yeah,
Manhattan,
right.
and then uh, my partner Vincent, DJ Chubacum. I think he's changed it just to DJ Vincent uh,
Okay.
now, but he got us a gig in his neighborhood in Brooklyn, which was Bed-Stuy, and we did these marathon events. That we were there from 9 p.m. to 4 in the morning, and you could play any style of music, and it was kind of there as I really learned that skill about like trying to read the crowd, like what works, and like then thinking about what music is going to fit for the next song. How do you curate to a live audience? And they were kind of a fickle audience, and also the length of the show being like 7 hours, you can't stick to one genre.
No.
You kind of have to keep it interesting. Anyways, that sort of turned into other opportunities to play a lot at this venue called Brooklyn Bowl. We got to open for a whole bunch of like amazing talent, and then you know the local promoters in New York start calling, saying, "Hey, would you like to open for like Snoop Dogg, or would you like to play
Wow.
here? Would they like play there?" And
Wow.
so we were kind of an ongoing thing. We um, really complement each other. Like I was kind of interested in, roots reggae and breakbeat and sort of modern electronica, where he was very deep in, dance hall and soca and hip hop. And so we together we kind of like complemented each other and being able to cover a lot of ground.
Right.
And we're just good buddies, and we just had a blast. And it was yeah, like so between 2011 and 2018, which is about 7, 8-ish years, we were busy like every other weekend doing some event, and we just love to play with other bands. I think that always made it sort of exciting, where to get to meet a lot of great people and kind of get to spread the message or the word of this group.
You mentioned being on the radio on campus radio. But when I read up on you online, you did some guest appearances on CIUT, which I'm a U of T grad, so it used to
Oh,
be a
nice.
station I used to listen to quite a bit. So what's the difference of playing gigs like CIUT radio and club gigs? Like what's the difference between those two?
Well, for one, I feel the job of the radio DJ is also to spend a lot of time talking and saying, "Oh, this song was, this band. Oh, this is an interesting tidbit. Oh, that band's coming up and playing in Toronto next week." Or like, "Oh, I was just at the show and this was one of the best songs." trying to
Right.
give some context to the
Yeah.
song, to the music. So it's a lot of talking. And I think also with campus radio, you're really thinking about the medium in which that this is one of the few places that are not that are going to play independent music. It's a
Right.
few places that you don't have to play commercial stuff. And if you listen to any other station in Toronto, they're only play stuff that's commercial. So, I'm always thinking, oh, I want to play Canadian music, stuff that's underrepresented, stuff that I think that's really good, that's got a lot of promise,
Right.
that needs to be listened to like a wider audience. So I'm thinking a whole different sort of uh, whole different way when I'm doing on the radio. It's really about trying to elevate artists and also playing stuff that I love and I think people should be exposed to. When I feel like when you're DJing for people, you want to also educate your audience and play stuff they don't know, but you still want to play stuff that you think that they're going to enjoy. And there's some level of familiarity that you want to have your audience feel. And so that's why actually I'm really interested in stuff like edits. And so you're playing like a new song, but it has elements that people recognize. So like mashups and people take a new take on a classic song.
Yeah.
I would find that's always a great icebreaker to your audience. So
Yeah. Like that.
yeah, I think they're two
Say,
different mediums, and like I DJ all these different styles of music. So you know, every sort of situation is like needs to be like a custom style of song. So like you really got to think about, okay, this is the audience. This is the specific type of DJ that's like, oh, and I'm opening, like I'm not here to steal the show. I'm just here to try to warm up the crowd. I'm just here to like create some ambiance that he can build off. So, but I'm always more thinking about the rest of the bill. My job in a lot of cases is just create a little bit of excitement, but not
yeah.
so much that like helping build the anticipation for like a headline act.
Yeah. Well, that kind of leads me to the next question because I wanted to talk a little bit about promotion.
Okay.
On the promotion side of things, like I was at your show for the return of Mark Farina.
Oh yeah, that
Uh,
was great.
DJ Yogi opened. I think you were the MC of that show too, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken. And you like definitely blew the doors off the place. What's the transition like from being a DJ musician to a promoter? Like how do you do that transition?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's a little bit tricky because if you're working the crowd, that means you're not managing the rest of the event. So you got to be really careful. I like to make sure that I have like a lot of backup. I have good people who are working with me. So when I am doing a DJ thing, that I'm not worried about, I'm not worried about where the headline artist is going to be picked up. I'm not worried about them. So there's some considerations because I know that usually as you're the promoter at a show, you're actually kind of like spending your whole time just like wandering around, making sure that everything's going right, and
Okay.
you're trying to chat with everybody, like, oh, you're like have a little small talk and good to see you, and then you're like, oh, I gotta go check on something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hopefully, you get a ton of short encounters with like everybody, but you're always really trying to just be um, that point person to make sure that everyone's having a good time, that everything's running smoothly. So there is some considerations when you're the DJ as well. I mean, I came to being a promoter for my love of music and love of performing as well. So, I don't think there's like a switch that I just turn on the other one. Like I think you're still a promoter while you're up there performing, and you're just better at thinking about creating the right ambiance and picking the right songs because you're thinking about the whole bill, all that's going to happen in a night. So I think there's like some advantages for people who are promoter DJs.
Well, that's a thing because I mean, Mark Farina is my favorite Chicago house DJ. I'm wondering like what it was like to book a guy like that? Like what do you have to go through?
Well, you know what's interesting about Mark Farina is I had worked with Mark Farina like 20 years ago. When I lived in Nova Scotia, I helped develop a festival called the Evolve Festival, which is like a 3-day music and social awareness event. We had bands, DJs, really mixed bag from folk to dubstep. And Mark Farina was our headliner, I think, in like 2002.
Wow.
Um,
So you're still
and
playing
so
the
I always
records.
sort of, had a lot of affinity for, mushroom jazz and especially in university, you're always thinking, well, I would always like to have music while I studied, but I didn't like music that had too much vocals. So I think stuff like a lot of the mushroom jazz stuff and down tempo stuff like DJ Shadow, who I mentioned, that type of stuff I'd always listen to, like instrumental, you know, music. That was
Yeah.
really good for me. So, anyways, I always had a big um, fan. I was a big fan of Mark Farina, but over the years of becoming a promoter in Toronto, years later, other promoters used to tap me to help them promote Mark. So I had sort of been in and out of working with Mark for 20 some odd years, almost always as like a, support person. And so, I run a festival in Toronto called the Groovin' in the Park Festival.
Yeah.
And the event that you went to was actually the after party for
Okay.
in the park, where Mark had played a free show to about 4,000 people. And what I love about Mark is that while he is a house music DJ, and that is definitely, a lot of where he sits in terms of his peers, he's not limited to being house DJ. On these shows that I have worked with him, he's played hip hop, he's played, classic rock, he played
Really?
this. He was
Wow.
there was nothing that was like off limits as long, but it was everything was tasteful. So I think what I liked about Mark is that he doesn't feel like he's pigeonholed to say like, oh, I'm this style of DJ and I play this style all night. He had a lot of depth, and he had some different routes he could go. And in speaking with him, it sounds like a lot of his sets really are off intuition.
Yeah.
He likes certain songs, but he's not saying, oh, this is you know the songs I typically pick.
Right.
He just goes kind of on intuition, and he's
Yeah.
feeding off the crowd. And so actually the night that you saw him play in Toronto at the Box,
Yeah.
that was, I guess, the third show that I had done with Mark in the last 6 months, because I brought him to Toronto for New Year's as well.
Yeah.
And what we told him that night, because I had a team of promoters helping me for this New Year's party at the Velvet Underground, was really like, don't think you need to play in house only. Like, feel the crowd out. What uh, do what you want. Don't feel pigeonholed. So
Yeah.
I actually like DJs like that. And one of my other favorite DJs is this guy named Giles Peterson. And when you go see Giles Peterson or DJs of this ilk, you actually don't want to know any of the songs he plays. You want to go in and hear all brand new music. So these types of DJs who are curated their audience to just be attuned to brand new music, I think that's marvelous. Because
Yeah.
typically you go to a band show, or like even like say some of the some DJs who have really big hits, you're expecting them to play like a greatest hits set.
Absolutely. I want to move on. So I think I'm getting a sense of who's influenced you, but I'm going to ask the question anyway. So who has influenced you electronic music wise to do what you do? If you had to pick one or two.
Um, I don't know if I had like. I mean, my favorite DJ, and I mentioned him a couple times, DJ Shadow. I
Yeah.
love this kind of cut and paste stuff he does.
Okay.
Um, but when I think of like the people who actually influenced me as a promoter, I think of people like Michael Cole. I think of people like Bill Graham. These people who were kind of business minded, people that were able to um, bring people together at a big um, in a big way at like a, you know, of course, these people are sort of legendary people that have done, you know, massive things. Michael Cole's known for, you know, bringing the Stones around the world, and Michael
Oh,
Jackson.
nice.
And Bill Graham was the promoter from like the Grateful Dead and Janis Joplin.
Right on.
So, you know, those are people I think of when I've, you know, those were kind of roadmaps of like people who kind of carved their own path through the business. And, you know, those are the people I like idolize.
That's awesome. So I want to end on this. What kind of influence do you feel you have on electronic music, Jay?
Well, okay, I didn't get to touch on this too much, but you know, me and a friend named Farbsy, we've
Yeah.
been promoting breakbeats in Toronto for about 15 years. In that sort of series of DJs, we're thinking about like the top turntablists. So
Okay.
we brought people like Mixmaster Mike, Grandmaster Flash,
Oh, yeah.
and then there's a whole UK side of breaks. It's like Stanton Warriors, Crafty Cuts, and Ace Skills. Then there's a West Coast Canada side to that, and it's like Sticky Buds, the Funk Hunters, Slink. In the US, there's lots of great acts like Fort Knox 5, or you know, there's just like a ton of these DJs are not kind of their niche. And so between I think 2006 when we started, we were doing this thing where we always do like a band and a DJ. So we bring like all of Toronto's local funk bands and pair them with like an international DJ and create this sort of crossover crowd where people who are like, oh, I love bands, oh, but I also love DJs. Like, I think what we were trying to appeal to is that these two crowds don't have to be separated. You don't have to just
That's a
go to
great
a show. You don't
idea.
have to go to a band show. And I think
Yeah.
if I was going to say that, you know, we had any influence, it would be that we turned DJ people onto bands and we turned bands onto DJ people.
DJs. Yeah, that's awesome.
So,
Wow.
you know, so I know one of the DJs that we worked with early on was this guy named Z Trip, and Z Trip, in my mind, invented the whole, or at least popularized the mashup side. That's when he's playing, you know, an AC/DC song, but the lyrics, you know, are like a Wu-Tang Clan song.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the ones that really brought that up, and he's become LL Cool J's DJ, and he played with the Roots and LL Cool J, Queen Latifah, Jadakiss, and DJ Jazzy Jeff. And that's what I sort of love about music is like, you know, you're growing old with some of these artists, and we've made lots of great friendships, and some of these people, you know, they've really done well for themselves and been on their own journey, and you know, it's exciting to sort of share you know, their success a little bit with them.
Yeah. Jay, thank you so much for doing this. This means the world to me.
It's my pleasure.
And I hope to have you back sometime. And everybody, that's Jay NuFunk, and this is on Influences Podcast. Thank you very much.
Oh, my pleasure.
You have been watching and listening to Influences Podcast. Influences Podcast is written, produced, and hosted by yours truly, Jason Harischuk. Also produced by Angela Churchill, aka Purple Sapphire. My social media consultant is Christina Laukinen, also known as My Girl Tuesday. Check out Influences Podcast on Instagram and TikTok at influences_podcast. That's influences_podcast. Thanks for watching and listening.